Dolphins 31, Giants 16. Welcome to Talking Giants presented by SeatGeek. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. And the New York Giants fall to 1-4, and it's sad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad, man.
It's so bad.
That's the intro.
So I texted Justin. I was like, we should let's just alternate some stats. Why don't you just hit me with a stat first?
Before I get into that, because we're gonna have a stat riff off here. Like, I could go into stats and why this team is so bad, but I want to start here. It's October 8th when we're recording this. This past Saturday, I watched Drake May and Caleb Williams, like intentionally. I barely said a word all day today, all game, besides slamming my couch when there were 3 false start penalties in a row. I don't care, because I really don't think this team cares, so why should I? And even in some of the lost seasons in the past, Bobby, I was generally more excited to watch this team and look out for some things, but now I could not care less. So those are my opening thoughts. Do you have any thoughts to that before I give you a stat that's bad?
Well, it should not be just because they are 1-4, Justin, that we have those feelings of like, man, this is just like going into this game where it's just like you're kind of just dejected. And even when the Giants like, hey, maybe it can be close, you're still like, nah, I'm not on the, on the edge of my couch because like I just know that this is not going to work well in this offense.
Snacks had a great tweet at halftime where it was 17-10, and he's like, oh my God, the Giants deserve like credit for only being down a touchdown. But at the same time, it's like, it feels like you're down by 4. You're in this weird territory where halftime it's 17-10 and the Giants are in the game. And then also at the same time, you somehow feel like they're down by 4 touchdowns because, like you said, just the offense can't do anything.
Yeah, this offense is horrible. So like, and I want to talk about Andrew Thomas's loss, right? Which I think has been understated, which I didn't think it would be, but it has been understated, and everyone else around has really been a letdown. Hit me with a stat though.
Okay, I'll give you one to start. The Giants are still the only team in the NFL that has not covered a spread yet. There's one.
The New York Giants offense is averaging 11 points per game, which includes a 31-pointer, which is ranked 32nd in the NFL. If you take away the Cardinals games in their losses, they were averaging 6 points per game.
The 2023 Giants have the lowest passing touchdown rate in franchise history so far.
Daniel Jones' sack rate is 15.6%, which went up from last week when he was sacked 11 times. That's double what it was last season on a team that gave up the 5th most sacks in the NFL.
As of right now, that's the highest in franchise history. They have the highest sack rate in franchise history.
Is that a stat? Okay.
That's a stat.
The
yeah.
Giants have given up 29 sacks in 5 games, 6 per game. Would be 99 sacks for the season, which is the second highest of all time to the 86 Eagles. There were 5 teams that had less than all of the 29 sacks the Giants have this season, all last season.
I got more. This is from Do a Barrel Roll. Since 2000, 37 teams have started the year with 6 or fewer total touchdowns in 5 games. 0 out of 37 made the playoffs. There were 2 9-7 teams and 2 8-8 teams. Only 12 of 37 are from 2010 on. Only 6 are from 2017 on. None of those teams after 2017 exceeded 6-10.
The offense has 12 points in the first half of the season. That is 2.4 points per game in the first half.
Congratulations to the Giants. The offense has scored 24 points in their losses this year. That is finally now more than the 21 points the offense and the special teams has given their opponents so far this year.
Man, those are some. Do you have any more stats?
I have some defensive stats on how this was a historically bad day for them, even though fans are giving credit for the Giants' defense. But that's it on offense.
Yeah. I had offensive notes, and we'll talk about the defense. But it does start, Justin, with this offense, right? I mean, they're the number 32 offense in the NFL.
That was fun.
And they are really, really bad. Whether it's running the ball, throwing the ball, they just can't operate. And at least this game, like it's now, what's going to be frustrating is during this stretch, everything comes down to Daniel Jones versus OLine. Where last week I actually thought the O-line gave them enough time before the pick six to operate, and DJ just had a lot of bad plays. In this game, I'm sure when we go back and watch the all 22, there'll be some stuff there. And I just want to talk about overall the approach of DJ. But this was an offensive line, game where I'm looking at them the most, and there's 7 sacks. 4 of the 7 sacks they had came on third downs, which were like their obvious passing down situations. And the Giants, Justin, like play calling wise, they tried to run the ball. Like they handed the ball off 21 times in a game where, again, they didn't have the lead for a single snap, and they handed the ball off 21 times. You threw some deep passes that none of them were completed. It was the Evan Neal. We'll talk about that sack. The Evan Neal, like where the rusher goes untouched on a third down, makes it a 55-yard field goal. Graham Gano misses it. There was another, and again, there was 3 other ones that were on third down. I mean, this offense without Andrew Thomas, and this offense is just inoperable. Like DJ is leaving clean pockets like last week. He's not trusting anything in front of him, and we've seen him operate with left guard through right tackle bad, but without Andrew Thomas, man, like people like to do this DJ with Saquon and without Saquon splits. Really go look at it like once Andrew Thomas got good, like halfway through that rookie season, with and without, because it has looked like 2 different offenses, and includes the 2021 with Garrett. And now we have a sample size of with Brian Dable and Mike Kafka that is just and they're obviously missing Saquon a lot too, right? Like they're not able to run the ball effectively, and no one else is stepping up to the plate, really. Like the number one guy you'd say who stepped up to the plate on offense today, well, I'm going to remember him for the plays he didn't make today, and Darren Waller. And DJ, didn't complete a single pass over 10 yards. Like, who's stepping up to the plate?
No one. Ben Bredesen at one point left the game with an injury for a couple plays, so then practice squad player Jalen Thomas comes in and snaps the ball for a few plays. Ben Bredesen eventually comes back. Marcus McKeithen eventually injures his knee, and then former tackle / practice squad player guard Jalen Mayfield comes into the game, and they all look absolutely fantastic. So here's my question to you. That was sarcasm. Here's my question to you. At least 2021's offensive line had Andrew Thomas in there for the majority of the season. There was a period of time where Andrew Thomas was missing in 2021. Is this offensive line worse than 2021's offensive line? And I cannot believe this is a legitimate question that I am asking.
Oh,
you watch
God,
both.
It is.
It is worse, right? It has to be.
Yeah, because that offensive line actually put together some decent outings, right? Whereas this offensive line really hasn't, besides, people would say the Cardinals game, but the offensive line, to me, wasn't that very good in that game. It was just their linebackers and secondary allowed the Giants to do some stuff. I guess Azudu, that was his best game. Yeah, I do think it's worse, and especially without Andrew Thomas.
They can't go more than 5 plays. They can't go more than 5-6 plays without the offensive line, somebody on the offensive line having a disaster play causing a negative play. And if there is one negative play that the offense has, the drive is over. The drive is over. And this was the first game, Bobby, and this really doesn't matter. Like, this does not matter when I say this, but I'm walking away from this game being a little annoyed on the Giants' play calling on second down. And this is from Doug Analytics. I'm glad he put it this way. Giants offense had 15 plays of 2nd and 7+ and ran the ball 60% of the time on those. They had 9 runs for a negative .38 EPA per play, 22% success rate. They had 6 dropbacks on 2nd and 7+ plus .83 EPA per play. That's an 83% success rate, 5 out of 6 positive EPAs. So, man, I don't think it matters. It really doesn't matter. This was one of the first times where I felt like the Giants coaching staff was coaching to avoid a sack on third down just so they can have maybe a 3rd and 7 and a 3rd and 8 instead of a 3rd and 12 and a 3rd and 13. Doesn't matter, like I said. They wouldn't have won the game, but that bothered me a little bit.
So you're saying you felt like they were coaching like afraid of the sack, right?
Afraid of the sack, yeah. Which they should,
agree.
In a way.
Here's the thing. I don't blame them, though. I don't blame them
after
what we've seen. Like, I think, to me, it is more valuable to get teams to at least have to be playing to run on passing downs than it is to, you know, the whole, like knowing what you're capable of, right? And again, like you saw, anytime they got on these third downs, they gave up sacks. So I kind of don't blame them for that.
But that's
now,
why I would have wanted them to be aggressive on second down to avoid the third and longs. But again, there's no easy solution.
But it wasn't even just third and longs, Justin. It was third and shorts.
Yeah, man. And they can't run the ball on third and short either, which is the difficult thing. There's no good answer. There's nothing. There's nothing to say, really.
Yeah, and I mean, they're operating basically solely from quick game for the most part. You know, DJ went for, like, if you look at DJ's like stats the last 3 games, he's completing like over 70% of his passes.
Yeah, but the average depth of target.
That's what I'm saying. There's no yards. Like this today, he had 7.6 average depth of target, which is like twice of what it was last week. Yeah, to still like want to be one of the bottom 10 QBs in the NFL this week. And you know, you have misses to, you know, Darius Slayton deep. Like we've had 3 Darius Slayton deep targets this year. They've all been far and outside, right? You missed to Wandale on that third down. So, and again, I understand part of it is like, whoa, DJ's got to play perfect, and I get that sucks. But like the Wandale one, like that miss should not happen.
There was
and again,
2 third and 6 to Wandale's that I feel like Jones missed, and I think even in the third quarter there was the second third down miss to Wandale in the third quarter. I'm pretty sure, like you'll see when you turn on the film, I'm pretty sure there was somebody running a route deep down the field that was open too, way past the sticks. So
yeah, and that's the other thing is like once we watch all 22, I'm sure there'll be some stuff that we see. But again, like just like after the first 4 games, right? Like if this was one game out of you know 5 games and the other 4 were solid for DJ. But again, this is not going to be inspiring anybody. Again, I don't have any hot take from Daniel Jones coming away from that, or take that I didn't have coming into the game. But nothing was changed, you know, good or bad. And then when Tyrod goes in the game, now DJ averaged 3.84 yards per play, or the offense did with him. It averaged 4.1 yards per play with Tyrod. I thought they kind of looked different but same in their styles, right? But I think that's like, if you want to be positive, DJ, like, oh, see, Tyrod Taylor came in there, was running for his life in there. But on the negative side, it's like, okay, Tyrod Taylor came in and the offense didn't look any different. If anything, it looked a tiny bit better. Yeah, it's just so frustrating to watch, again, an offense that has put together 2.4 points per game in the first half, is averaging 11 points per game, and again, including a 31-pointer versus the Cardinals. So you have this outlier game, and the rest of the games you're averaging 6 points per game, right? And the Dolphins were a bottom 5 defense in scoring, and you just weren't able to do anything. And this was the type of defenses that DJ's had success against in the past.
Yeah, the teams that maybe play too high, that are giving you the underneath stuff, but it just hasn't happened. So now I guess the next Daniel Jones conversation to have is he's hurt and he has a neck injury, and there's one quote that Daniel Jones says to Brian Daboll that he's going to be fine, and then the other quote that people are running with is Daniel Jones says that this feels similar to the 2021 injury. I'm waiting for whatever tests he's going to get on Monday and whatever MRI results are going to happen. But Daniel Jones is hurt. It's a neck injury. Josh Azudu gets pulled as soon as he allows that sack. Matt Peart came in.
Yeah, and finally this offensive line got Daniel Jones injured, right? Like, it's okay, finally. Like, the hits that he was taking, and he's running the ball so much. Like, yeah. I bet you there's no one on the offense who's taken more hits than him this season, especially when you've split the running back snaps around with Saquon being injured. Like, obviously this was going to happen, and this is the difference between playing with a bad offensive line, but Andrew Thomas, and just a bad offensive line, 5 across the board. And Ben Bredeson at center had probably his worst game in the last 2 seasons. You know, I'll give him a little slack because he is playing center, but it was his worst game in the last 2 seasons. Gave up that sack on 3rd and 9. The Evan Nealon touch sack, it kind of unraveled through him. And I want to talk about that play individually because there's some differences of opinions on it.
I think he might be hurt. I think Bredesen might be like lower body might be hurt too. I saw him limping at one point.
Well, he came out of the game and then came back in, so we don't know what the deal is with that.
Well, he was bleeding in his face. I don't think it was anything lower body, but who knows? That interior, oh my god, that interior of the Dolphins defensive line they were like having fun. I mean, what was it? Who was it? Wilkins?
Yeah, Christian Wilkins.
Other guy? And Sealer. Sealer had 2 sacks. He had 3 QB hits. He had 3 tackles for loss. And then Wilkins had a half a sack. He had 2 QB hits and no tackles for loss. They had a very fun game, those two. They were having a lot of fun out there.
And again, there's just a difference of comfort in the pocket when your blind side's protected. Right? It's just the facts of football is that it's part of football. When your blind side is protected, it just gives you more comfort. And that's why we saw DJ bail from clean pockets a lot last week. Because there's just kind of like that internal clock of like, man, it's got to be coming from the backside. And he's never had great feel for that backside pressure either.
I'm glad you brought up the blind side because it gives me an excuse to bring up Andrew Thomas. I'm starting to get a little conspiracy theorist with Andrew Thomas, man. Because we went from talking about how this is amongst the reporters. I'm not even blaming the reporters. They're reporting what they're hearing. They're reporting what Andrew Thomas is telling them. They're reporting what people in the locker room are telling them. We went from after the Dallas game, heading into the Cardinals game. Yeah, he has a chance to play. And the hamstring doesn't really all that much matter for offensive linemen. It's not like they're skill position players where they're running backs and wide receivers that really rely on their hamstrings. And now we're 4 weeks later, and Andrew Thomas is seemingly having setbacks. And now the report was this week, oh, well, Andrew Thomas needs to feel comfortable on that leg where he pushes back and he's using that left leg to push back on that leg in his sets. So what is it? I'm getting a little conspiracy theory, like maybe this hamstring injury is worse than was initially led on, because I don't know if there is a clear sight and a clear path of when Andrew Thomas is actually going to come back. It's much more clear for Saquon Barkley to come back and play next week than Thomas.
Yeah, and they also, I mean, they played Thursday Night Football after Saquon had an ankle sprain, and he's like, oh, he might play this week. We'll take it up to game time and see. So they love to play those games. So I don't know, but again, they are missing Andrew Thomas. With the offense, I want to talk about that Evan Neal and touch sack, because obviously Evan Neal is going to be a big topic. So do a barrel roll said this, and I disagree with him, but I do want to point out to what Evan Neal was doing, right? So they had no running back in for protection, right? And I remember this being a big topic. Remember when Eric Flowers had that sack versus the Jaguars, his first year at right tackle, and there was a big argument of like
2018.
Yes, where he like went to go block the inside and just it became a big deal.
Yeah.
So it's a similar. I hate that we're doing that, but it's a similar thought, right? So they don't have a running back in protection, so the idea is protect the inside man. But Ben Bredesen, the nose tackle, crosses his face to the right side and beats him, right? So with that linebacker blitzing, the thought is, okay, well, McKeithen pick up that guy, and then Neal pick up the linebacker that's blitzing, and if you're going to have someone be a free man rusher, have it be off the edge. But where I disagree with is that's not how it's done up on a whiteboard, and by doing it of that thought, because that's what Neal was thinking. Like that, if you ask Evan Neal candidly, that's what he was thinking on that. Is, well, now you have 2 unblocked guys, or two guys running for your quarterback. Because once your center got beat, he got beat. So McKeithen and McKeithen are not going to be fast enough to bump down and protect that guy that got beat, Ben Bredesen got beat on. That's just not going to happen. So now you have 2 free rushers at the quarterback instead of letting DJ be able to scramble to the right. So I understand the thought behind that, but to me, like that is on Evan Neal, right? It's on Ben Bredesen for getting beat, and Evan Neal maybe overthinking the play a little bit because they have a no running back protection. We'll see. Didn't get a great replay of it to see if there was like a hot route open or something, but nonetheless, I'd put that on Evan Neal and obviously Ben Bredesen for just flat out getting beat. And then Azudu got blown past for the hit that injured DJ. I mean, just ugly up front.
Yeah. Bobby, let me this isn't going to be a fair offense-defense split this episode, so before we get to I mean, I guess we could talk about Darren Waller a little bit. I don't know if you have any more offensive line thoughts. I want to talk about the farmer's dog. The results of switching your dog's food from kibble to fresh can seem like magic, but the farmer's dog doesn't use any sorcery or secret ingredients to make their fresh food. Just science. And I'll tell you what, Farmer's Dog has really been generous, and they've like continued to send Mikey food, and it's like some vegetable-based stuff. It's some like beef-based stuff. And Mikey has enjoyed every single bowl. And I think what's most important is that like he's been healthy. He's been energetic. And, you know, hey, I pick up his shit every single day, and his shit has been nice and firm. And it's like, yeah, my dog's healthy, and that makes me feel good. And I'll tell you what, I'm not in the best mood. I'm not in the best of mood once 5 o'clock comes rolling around because the Giants just lost. My dog freaked out. Mikey freaked out when it was time for dinner. 10 minutes earlier than he usually gets it, by the way, so he's really looking forward to it. Freaked out wanting the farmer's dog. He looks forward to it every single day, twice a day, breakfast and dinner. The farmer's dog also sends the food pre-proportioned specifically for your dog based on their unique nutritional needs. That makes it easy to help your dog maintain their ideal weight, which is one of the biggest indicators of a full, healthy life. Doesn't matter if your dog's young or old, it's always the right time to begin investing in their health. Get 50% off your first fresh box of healthy food at thefarmersdog.com/JohnBoy. Plus, you get free shipping. That's thefarmersdog.com/JohnBoy for 50% off. Plus free shipping? That's insane. Bobby Skinner, you'll be glad you did. Mikey will be glad he did as well. Where do you want to go?
You brought up Waller. I don't want to. I mean, he did have the best receiving output for a Giants player this season, with again 8 catches for 86 yards. What did you think about the almost touchdown ball? I know his arm was getting pulled, but for me, like we talked about, like I thought people had this unfair expectation in the 49ers game when he didn't catch that pass that DJ missed on. That's a play where I expect my tight end to have the strength to bring that ball in. That's just like that's a kind of you gotta have it type of play. The one on the left sideline, that's a tough catch. Like I'm not gonna lose my mind about that. But the one that the touchdown, he had him beat. It gets dropped perfectly into the breadbasket. I just feel like the Darren Wallers of the world need to pull that one in.
Yeah, it's Xavier Howard too, where he's a really, really good corner. I go both ways on it, man, because Xavier Howard makes a really good play on the football. He does get his hand in there. He gets his hand in there before Waller even catches the ball. And then after Waller does get 2 hands on it, gets his hand in there to even further separate it. But at the same time, I said it, Darren Waller got 2 hands on it. And you expect your tight end that's going up against a corner to try and find a way and pull down that ball. I think Darren Waller should be getting more opportunities like that. That's my main takeaway. I know he got 11 targets, 8 catches today. I'm walking away from this game saying Darren Waller needs more opportunities like he got, even when Eli Apple was blanketing him on the sideline in that contested catch opportunity. He needs more opportunities like he got when he dropped it against Xavier Howard, because he even saw it where, one of the only 20-yard plays that we've had over the last couple of weeks, Darren Waller takes that little slant, or whether it's a mini post, Eli Apple's trailing in coverage, and he even gets yards after the catch. There was another play where he kind of caught it in the flat, kind of carried a guy for a couple yards, and it was a positive play. So Darren Waller needs more opportunity. He needs to be force-fed the ball. He needs more opportunities in this offense because nobody else in this offense, receiving-wise, is carrying the load, doing anything.
Yeah, that's I'm not going to go too hard on the only guy who put together a respectable stat line for the offense. So let's, before we move on to the defense, I just want to talk about this. Coaching, right? And this is something we'll have a better grasp on the Mailbag podcast. But overall, this game plan, I mean, you threw 3 deep passes, which is more than Daniel Jones usually does. We talked about going into this game that you kind of have to run the ball to just keep some balance to this offense. They handed the ball off 21 times, but only for 47 yards against a defense that kind of invites the run. And we can talk about maybe Eric Gray looked good running the ball. I dislike everything else about Eric Gray. Ball security,
he did look good in pass protection though. That one play.
He did have that one good block on Christian Wilkins, but that's not enough for me to overcome the the dreadful blocking in preseason.
Right.
Hopefully he has got better, but I'm not saying, oh, look, he's a good blocker now. But it was good. And then returning kicks. But I thought he ran the ball fairly well. Obviously, he's not doesn't have the speed to blow you away, but I thought he did a good job running the ball.
Yeah.
But they threw some deep passes. The quick game was fairly efficient, and they just kind of played they coached like they knew their offensive line was atrocious, right?
Which it is.
And I want to say this too, and this is kind of a knock on DJ with it, and a guy on DJ who has not taken the opportunities that they've given him.
Right.
So now they may go hey, we're gonna go back to some of those things we did last year because you're not gonna hit these things. When we put these things there for you and you're not going to throw them, well, we're not going to try and put all these through. We're going to try and get squeeze out as many wins as possible until we move on for you. That could also happen too. I remember last year the whole, hey, is it the receivers? Is it the offensive line? Is it the quarterback? Why are they running an offense that's kind of simplistic like that? Well, you know what? You may get your freaking answer, and it would be 2 out of the 3. It's not the receivers this year, but. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Defensively. I mean, you just gave up big play after big play, right? And I know, hey, they gave touchdowns from 2 yards, 2 touchdowns from 2 yards, a 76-yarder and a 69-yarder. The two drives where they had the 2-yard touchdowns, you had 4 20-plus yard plays on those drives. I want to read the Xavier McKinney quotes that are out there.
Let's do it.
Because I think that can lead into this, talking about this defense. So from Dan Duggan, asked the question about Miami's big plays. Xavier McKinney, what we're not going to do is keep blaming the defense. We lost as a team, and it is what it is. Really don't like that. I'll explain. And then the second one, Fox analyst Jonathan Vilma said on the broadcast that McKinney blew the coverage on Tyreek Hill's 69-yard touchdown. McKinney said that's not accurate at all. Who was on the broadcast? Told it was Vilma. McKinney replied, oh, okay. He don't know what he's talking about then. He don't know football. He don't know coverage clearly. Now, I want to start with that one, and we'll talk about it a little more, why I actually do think McKinney's right about the touchdown play. Here's where I'm going to push back on Xavier McKinney. One, who is coming away from this blaming the defense over the offense, Justin? Who's coming away from this and their articles are being written at the top about the defense?
I don't even think that was the question that he was being asked.
Second, that wasn't the question, Xavier McKinney. They were asked about the big plays that you gave up to Miami. Because guess what? That's what you fucking gave up. Big play after big play after big play. You gave up over 300 yards passing. You gave up 222 yards rushing. So honestly, fucking awesome, dude. Sick. You guys got some turnovers for the first time in the fucking season, Game 5. Congrats, you finally got some turnovers. Good job. Following the pick 6, 5 of the next six plays with 2 minutes left to go in the game were over 10 yards and they get a field goal on it. So congrats on your little forced fumbled and pass deflection today, Xavier McKinney, and the first turnover in 5 games. But you guys gave up big play after big play. And this is a game where they didn't even look like they were that interested in it. Like it was just kind of came easy for them. So no. Do I come out of this game blaming the defense for the reason the Giants lost? No, they actually kept them in this game for a little while with the turnovers, right? Like again, I'm congratulating them on that. They've done a lot. They've done a lot. They could have done a lot worse versus this Miami high octane offense. But don't come out here like this is freaking, the end of 2021 where the defense is actually doing really good in games and the offense is just not able to move the ball down the field. Like the defense has been bad this year. It just hasn't been anywhere near as bad as this god-awful offense.
This was the first time in franchise history the Giants allowed more than 500 yards and over 9 yards per play. And guess what? They would have allowed more yards and they would have allowed more yards per play if they didn't get the 3 turnovers. So, really bad.
Yeah, and that's... Xavier McKinney has put together, and I'm annoyed with McKinney, right? And I've hinted at it before that there's some things that annoy the shit out of me. And I hate to bring I really do hate to bring the most fire on this podcast about this because the offense is worse, right? But it's just a pattern of not being a leader by Xavier McKinney, who likes to talk about being a leader, a pattern of not being a leader. And it started, Justin, when was the first time I said to you, like, man, this is a really weird thing that he's doing right now? It was
dissing Patrick Graham after he left.
Yeah. 2021, he does an article with Steve Serby in the New York Post, and he's shitting all over the pass regime, right? But guess what? The pass regime defense actually did fairly decent. And guess what? If Patrick Graham was still your defensive coordinator playing that defensive style, you'd be in line to get a big contract.
Yeah. And you can even disagree with what Bobby just said about how the pass defense did well in 2021. It certainly did well for Xavier McKinney, and that was the first sign. Why we're bringing it up. It was the first of a few missteps by Xavier McKinney, most notably him almost losing 3 fucking fingers last year.
And then acting like a baby when people dared to ask him questions about it.
But why we bring up the Patrick Graham? Because that was the first step of Xavier McKinney just seemingly being misguided about things. Just, I'll leave it at that. Just being misguided about things and this defense, his role on this team, how he could be successful as a player, just misguided.
He complained about when he first, like, because remember he had the foot injury in camp, missed all of camp. They signed Logan Ryan. Complained that they didn't put him in the full snaps right away. Complained about his playing. And guess what? In 2021, they reduced Jabril Peppers snaps, and you played 100% of the time. And honestly, as good as his 2021 season, the first 3 weeks were actually kind of bad. He had a good amount of blown coverages for deep passes versus the Saints and versus the Broncos. So there's that. And then the ATV thing, where again, it's one thing to make a mistake. It's another thing to make a mistake, and then the first time you get asked questions about it, you act like, well, why are you guys asking me about this? It's a sightseeing tour. It's a sightseeing tour. Like, man up. And then when he gets asked about missed tackles, hey, no one said that missed tackles are the sole reason that you lost the fucking game, buddy. You got asked about it because it's happening a lot, more than any other team in the NFL. And a big part of it is you.
Yeah.
So just answer the question and try, well, that's not the only reason we lost. Right?
76 of the Dolphins' passing yards came from yards after the catch today. Guess whose responsibility it is to tackle receivers once they catch the ball? It's that secondary, and Xavier McKinney is supposed to be the leader of that secondary making plays, and he's not.
Who did Devin A-Chain look straight in the face with 15 yards of distance and just run right past?
Oh, that was a terrible angle. I understand he's running 21 miles an hour. He has the fastest time to combine. I get it. But that was a terrible, terrible angle. Terrible.
And that's a theme for this defense overall. And there's another Tyreek Hill big play where guess what? He's looking dead at you, and he just runs right past you. Runs right past you because you take a weak, a soft approach at the tackle. At least if you're going to miss fast. Don't miss slow. Now, that being said, the touchdown to Tyreek Hill, that is on Wink Martindale, not Xavier McKinney. They lined up in these 2 high safeties. They played a man coverage, and they had both the safeties come under. Both safeties became robbers. Usually you have, if you want to do that, you'd have one come underneath as the robber and then one play the deep middle. The sideline range or cheat one way, which you would cheat on Tyreek Hill. They were betting on some quick game stuff and like not having 2 high safeties. Like they were trying to disguise it pre-snap and get the, two into some a pre-snap throw.
And they bet
and
wrong.
It didn't work. And you had Trey Hawkins in the game covering. So that's on Wink Martindale, not Xavier McKinney. So I will back him up on that. That is not on him at all. That is the scheme that is being called. Vilma was wrong on that.
Vilma was wrong. Did Court? This is such a weird thought that I have coming from this game because I'm so interested in how this secondary has come to be, especially with the rotation that we have going on a cornerback right now. Like, I'm just so interested to, like, how this all came about. Cordell Flott comes into football games, and sometimes he makes plays that make you go, this guy can be good. But then there are other plays, a lot of them in practice, that he's just so bad, and that lets the coaching staff know that we can't trust this guy. Where there's some plays where Cordell Flott missed tackles on the backfield today, because that's what Snacks... I was on the phone with Snacks tonight. I was like, did you see that Cordell Flott pass deflection on Tyreek Hill? And then a couple plays later, Tyreek Hill gets that touchdown over Trey Hawkins. So he had that pass deflection on Tyreek Hill, which looked awesome. Were there some other plays where Cordell Flott missed some tackles? I can't remember.
I can't remember off the top of my head either, and I didn't note any of them in my rewatch. Yeah, I think I might know why Flott mean, he's getting more playing time, but again, I think I might have talked about it on the preview pod.
Trey Hawkins just missed tackles, and that's why.
Well, that's why Trey Hawkins got benched, I think, was because of missed tackles. And Hawkins hasn't been like a world beater in coverage either. Where Flott just it looked like they were running cover 6, and Flott just starts playing man, to where I sent it to coaches, and I'm like, can you explain to me what this is, and why is Flott playing this like it's a man match?
This was against Seattle last week that you're talking about.
And he did it twice, and they're like, he's like, it just. They're like, Flott has to be wrong, but it's twice, or maybe it is some type of defense that I'm not sure of. So that could be what. And he did look really bad in practices and training camp, and maybe he's a more of a game player than a practice player, which can happen. But
yeah, I'm just really curious how, because it goes back to the 2022 draft class as well. That the fact that the 2022 draft class having zero contributors. And I am putting Kayvon Thibodeau in this boat, by the way. Kayvon Thibodeau still got his ass kicked in the run game at times today. I know he has 4 sacks in the last 3 games, and the box score stuff is starting to look a little bit better. Kayvon Thibodeau is not a game-changing player right now. Where if
he got moved off the spot in the run a few times today.
If you're the 5th overall pick, you're expected to dominate game in, game out, play in, play out, and he's not. He shows up,
especially against the backup.
He shows up at times, and that's great. But the 2022 draft class has 0 contributors, and the closest thing that we have to a contributor is Daniel Bellinger, where the offense just Daniel Jones somehow takes more sacks when Daniel Bellinger is not in the game, and the run game looks substantially worse, but he's a backup tight end. And you know what? I will give him credit. Wan'Dale Robinson's playing with a lot of heart, but man, does he get just hit around, and he's so small and frail, and he was ruled out of the game with the concussion, and then 2 plays later, he's back in. This is a mess. And this season, yes, Andrew Thomas and Saquon Barkley getting hurt, I feel like that's going to kind of define it. But also, I think the bigger theme is, and I will bring this up every week, the 2022 draft class having 11 picks and 0 contributors and 0 guys with a path to having a second contract is terrible, and it has set this team back.
Oh yeah, absolutely, right. Like where we talked about in the mailbag pod, where we were talking about this regime and the Jones contract, and I'm like, man, the Jones contract is actually set up in a way where it's the least of my worries. The 2022 draft class is my biggest worry with this regime, and 2023, while we liked it a lot more coming out of it, and you haven't had the big what the hell is going on with this guy yet, but you also haven't had the guy who's through 4 weeks is oh, we've got a stud in this cat.
Deontay Banks has played better than I thought, but he hasn't made a tackle. He hasn't made a play on the football. Still waiting to see that, but he hasn't been as that was the one guy that
Banks hasn't been horrible, but he also hasn't done. He's given up a couple touchdowns.
Yeah,
there's he's given up a good amount of catches per game. So yeah, but again, he hasn't had through 4 weeks. We're not being he's him, right? Because so often we take these victories with rookies. And if he's solid now, that means he's going to be great later. And that's not always the case. But I do think Banks played pretty fairly well. But anyways, that being the point being is that the 2022 draft, I mean, even Dane Belton came in today, right? Because McFadden out, they played more 3 safety looks. I think that was part of, one, again, McFadden being out, and also you're playing against a team that's got a lot of speed and throwing a lot of motion and stuff at you. I mean, he blew a coverage on the first drive for 23 yards to Cedric Wilson on one of the big runs. He comes flying in and misses the tackle. So, he didn't look very good. I mean, they're not getting – again, they're just – outside of Bobby Okereke today in coverage, they're not really getting any plays made, right? Good job. Pinnock, the ball popped into his hands, but Okereke made a good play on coverage, and then the other interception that he got. But Okereke's been kind of frustrating in the run game, right?
Yeah.
On the 8-chain touchdown, Okereke just plays into blocks too often, right? We're just I want to he's so fast and athletic. Just go. Trust that everyone else is playing their gap responsibly, and go. And there's just too many times where he's playing in the blocks, and that happens especially they play these conservative pursuit angles or lanes when someone does get in the open field, and it leads to yak. And it's again, no one has been consistently stepping up on this defense. Dexter Lawrence, I didn't see Dexter Lawrence affecting too much in this game, but the other 4 games he has, and Aziz got injured again too. It's just it's just all of our worst fears coming into the season, right?
It's Murphy's Law. Everything that could have gone wrong and all of the worst fears, like, check every box. They have all happened.
With Andrew Thomas has always been our worst fear for injury, right?
Yep.
Well, we haven't had him healthy since. Yeah, we've had one healthy drive of Andrew Thomas all season.
First drive of the season.
Saquon Barkley getting injured. Daniel Jones not playing the exact same conservative style even when they're getting more on his plate. Offensive line being absolutely brutal. The 2022 draft class not stepping up. Azeez Ojulari, being injured constantly. It has been like you said, it's been every worst fear going into this season has been realized, besides Darren Waller being injured, really, which I'm sure will happen down the road eventually, and we'll get to check that one off the list. So it's been this frustrating. We're just, again, like, even if you told a Giants fan, hey, you're 1-4, you're thinking, no one thinks it looked like this, right? No one thinks it looked like this, even more so after the training camp and preseason that we saw. And we are just seeing just god-awful offensive football and very bad defensive football.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I think we're nearing a little bit towards the end of the show. Bobby, we're doing a little bit more with JM Football now. We're trying to cover the NFL a little bit more in each of our respective ways. Let's put on our talking Fins, talking Dolphins caps to ourselves. I think a Dolphins podcast is looking at this game saying, if the Giants had an average offense, they win this game. Like Tua, this is 2 weeks in a row where Tua against the Bills and now Tua against the Giants that has made some really head-scratching decisions throwing the football. They put the ball on the ground once and Kayvon Thibodeau falls on it. This is 2 weeks in a row where if it's not for I don't want to call the Dolphins just a manufactured offense, because they're not. They're fast, they're good, they have all the top speeds, and according to Next Gen of ball carriers this year, they're all the Dolphins. They're fast and they're good. But if you're like talking Dolphins, you just had 500 yards, you just had 9 yards per play, but somehow you're not feeling good about this victory because of how sloppy the team looked. And this is talking Giants, and we're talking about how the Giants are so much worse. So I don't know. I just wanted to throw that perspective out there of, I'm evaluating the Dolphins, and I'm like, hey, even as like an NFL fan who's trying to evaluate the Dolphins, I don't know if I even feel good about the Dolphins leaving this game, yet they won 31-16.
And you say that, like, I think even if the Giants had average offense today, they still lose this game. But if they had average offense versus Seahawks, they win that game, right? Like, that's basically, if you had again, we said one of the talking points from last podcast was specifically with Daniel Jones, not even just offense in general. It's like, if Daniel Jones has basically any performance that he had in the 2022 season, the Giants probably win this game. And he had, again, one of his worst. Now, today wasn't one of his worst, but it sure as hell wasn't one of his fucking best either. And, for that contract, I would like to have 200 yards in, maybe one of the last 3 games.
Maybe.
I guess he had 203 versus Seahawks, garbage time. He has 884 yards through 5 games. 104, 321, 137, 203, 119. So, it's just been bad all around. All around. And this offensive line, man, makes it to where it's just... It makes it impossible to have expectations. Like, I had a tweet today, Justin, where you talked about, like, man, how are you feeling about just the team? And I would like this offense to at least just be regular bad, right? But have some excitement to it and not just unwatchably bad. Like, if this was the 2019 offense, it's a lot better than what we're putting out on the field now. You're creating some explosives. You're doing some stuff. There's nothing to come away from on this offense and be like, that's exciting. Because even the one guy, like Darren Waller, who's produced for them, is here on a short term, like, we want to try and get some wins these next 2 weeks, a 2 years deal. So it's not like we're having this young guy.
There's no in between. There's no, with this Giant, and ever since like the inception of this podcast, it just feels like, if anything, there was more in between when I started. I started in 2018. You started in 2019. There was more in between. Jesus, I thought that was bad. I was complaining every week about Eli Manning and they need to move on, and he's not the... 2018 and 2019 at least had some, like, fun offensive games versus, with the exception of 2022, and even that offense wasn't awesome. It was good. Wasn't awesome. Wasn't, like, top 10 and...
Who, last year?
With the exception of last year.
Yeah, it was ranked 15th. It was perfectly average.
There, as a Giants fan, there is no, like, ever since we started doing this together in 2020, there is no, like, middle ground. It's either you're average or you're a little bit fun, or you're just the worst in fucking football. There's no middle ground. There's none.
Yeah, I mean, if season ended today, 3 of the last 4 seasons have produced the 31st or 32nd ranked offense in the NFL.
Before the season, maybe like worst case scenario, the offense is like 20th in points per game. Ah, shit, that's a step back. That's not good. Not 32nd.
I want to look something up real quick.
They haven't scored in 9 quarters an offensive touchdown. They still haven't scored an offensive touchdown in the first half. That will be the new counter. So it's no longer not just scored a touchdown, it's an offensive touchdown.
So, who's going to... I think we may not be 32nd in scoring, though. Hold on.
Patriots didn't score anything.
The Patriots might be worse than this because they got shut out in back-to-back weeks.
That's not fair. We scored a defensive touchdown today.
Yeah, that is true, but...
I can't wait for that game, by the way.
Oh yeah, I'm weird. So, what is this? This is last year.
Nope, he won 2023.
How did the Jets have? Oh, that's completions. That's passing.
There you go. Come on.
Okay, let me fix this. Let me find this stat, and we can go. Points.
You got it.
Okay, so the Patriots scored 0. Even if we just had the 9 offensive points, we still would be tied with the Patriots, but they don't keep stats like that. So we are actually not the number 32 scoring team in the NFL. So take that.
We are last in EPA per play. It'd be 3 of the last 4
years where we're 31st.
Last in EPA per play.
Bengals put up some points. The Saints obviously put up points. They were 31st and 29th. The Jets put up points. So it's us and the Patriots last by a lot. So us and Joe Judge at the bottom. So few flag home. All right, Justin, you got anything else?
The more things change, the more they stay the same. That's what they always say.
That is what they say. It's not about the memory. It is about the memory.
It's not about the moment. It's about the memory.
It's about the memory. All right, we will see you guys on Wednesday for a mailbag. We're going to watch all the film, put all the film reviews out. We're going to have so much freaking fun doing it. We appreciate you guys. We will see you then. Until then, let's go Big Blue.